But what I'm covering tonight is our last session on the Rapture. And we're going to cover Daniel 9, 24 through 27, so you can go ahead and turn there. I am going to try to make this so that you can understand it, and it is going to be a challenge to understand this, because it's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, I can't go through all the details on everything here, because it would take, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm going to try to cover all this tonight. So it'll be fun. I hope you had some coffee, and you're ready for this, but this is an absolutely amazing section of Scripture. I think this here section and the prayer that's just before it is two major sections in the Bible that really amazed me. I think it's pretty cool. So there's a lot here for one message. It'll give you a good overview. I can't go into all the details like I said. Now, I would like to teach the book of Daniel, and I've got it set up for possibly the end of 2025, if we're still here. But after I'm done here, the full armor of God's going to be taught. That's going to be approximately 6 weeks or so, with a little variety. Then I'm going to teach 2 Peter. Then we're going to have go through the book of Malachi. And then fruit of the Spirit. I'm going to do 6 weeks, cover the fruit of the Spirit, which I think is good for us to all know. And then we're going to have gleanings in Ecclesiastes. Then after that, we're going to go through the book of Daniel. So does that mean we're going to stick to all this? We don't know for sure, but we're going to try. But I just love having planned out and looking at things that we can cover in the Bible. It's exciting. I really love studying the Bible, and just the more you know, the more it helps you to understand more things about what's going on in this world. And it's kind of sad that there's not too many people that really dig into the Bible like they should. And it's just, churches nowadays are just teaching messages more on everything except for digging deep into the Bible verse by verse. So tonight, you won't be able to accuse me of not digging. We're going to dig, so be ready for this. These 4 verses are packed. So if you're in Revelation, Daniel chapter 9, I got Revelation on my head. Actually, we're going to finish Revelation next week, so that's kind of cool. I think I'll cry. I mean, it's been, 2 years or so? Okay. Yeah, we can start over again. Okay, so before I get into this, Israel was carried, first of all, the northern kingdom was defeated by the Syrians in 722 BC. Then Babylon came in 605 BC, conquered the southern kingdom, Judah, and dragged off Daniel and all these people to Babylon. They had to walk this whole distance. And then they came back in 597 BC and carried more people off, destroyed more stuff. Then they came back in 586 BC and destroyed Jerusalem altogether. So there was 3 phases of this Nebuchadnezzar coming to Babylon and destroying them. But this was like 605 BC, as I said. So this book, what took place here was 600 years before John the Baptist and before Jesus. Keep that in your mind, because this is what's going to make this all interesting. It is believed by most conservative scholars that Daniel was written somewhere around 537 BC, okay? Now, there's liberal scholars that say it had to be written later, like 200 BC, but they're shooting themselves in the foot, because even if they say 200 BC, there's still an amazing prophecy that was written and fulfilled. But I believe it was 537 BC. I believe God's word, and I believe that it was by all the archaeological evidence and everything of all this. And so, Daniel 9, verse 24 and 27. Let's start off by reading this. And like I think I talked to Jason about this. If it gets close to 7 and we're only halfway through, we'll finish it next week, but maybe we can't finish today. We'll see. Okay, verse 24 of Daniel chapter 9, and I'm going to read verse 24 through 27. Starting with 24, it says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. And 62 weeks the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with the flood. And unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week you shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. So may God bless his word as we study this tonight, because that's, if you've never really studied or looked into this, you're saying, what in the world is he trying to say? Now, you all been through Revelation, so the terminology and the things we talked about here, you'll have a good understanding of this, okay? So it helps. Typically, they say you go through the book of Daniel first, then through the book of Revelation, but I'm backwards, so we're doing Revelation, we'll do Daniel later on, so okay. Okay, so there's 7 questions that we hope to answer, okay? So get these in your mind. What does the time period 70 weeks indicate? What is the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem? Who is Messiah the Prince? What does it mean the Messiah shall be cut off? Who are the people and the prince shall come? What is the covenant that will be confirmed for 1 week? What does that determined shall be poured upon the desolate mean? So we're going to answer all these questions plus some other ones, okay? So this will, by the time I'm going to repeat a lot, and I'm going to go through these verses quite a few times. So it's because I think the more we go through it, the more we understand it, the more we'll grasp it. And so forgive me and just bear with me through that. So back at Daniel chapter 9, verse 1 and 2, we want to go back to the start of this chapter, chapter 9, verse 1 through 2. And actually, I'll have it on the screen here, but you can read it in your Bibles also if you like. But it says here in Daniel chapter 9, verse 1 and 2, I'll give you a few seconds to find it if everybody's looking. But it says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. Just so you know, Jeremiah was kind of a contemporary with Daniel, but he was like 50, 60 years older than Daniel, okay? So he was really little before Daniel. But it says here Daniel was reading his book, the book of Jeremiah. Okay, so now when you get into verses 3 through 19, which we won't cover, but we'll cover that sometime, I was thinking this would be a good message for the start of the year, this prayer, because this is what we need to pray for the United States, our country. But verses 3 through 19 is an absolute humble and contrite prayer from Daniel's heart. I mean, it's the most amazing prayer in the Bible, I think. It's one of them, at least. I think, what's the other? John 17? Yeah. Is a pretty amazing prayer, too. So, but this is a pretty amazing prayer. But here's what's interesting. The Bible always records historical events 100% accurate. The more you look into this, the more fascinating it is. It talks about the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus. So it gives a date stamp. It gives a genealogy, right? Of the seed of the Medes. Remember this Medes and the Persians conquered Babylon? Tells the nationality of this guy. King over the realm of the Chaldeans. He's the king of Babylon. So the Bible always gives dates and names and so on. Not just names picked out of the air. Real people. And archaeologically, when they dig up stuff, they find it, they say, oh, this guy's name, and they find this, and they find the date. And everything they find verifies what the Bible says. And it just really builds their faith to say, wow, this Bible is true. It's God's word. Not just recently, I'm not sure how long ago it was, but in Babylon, doing archaeological digs around the city of Babylon, where it was, they found where there was a plaster wall. And you know what? Daniel talks about this plaster wall with the guy where God wrote with his finger on the wall. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. So the Bible is amazing what it finds. And so here when it talks about the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, it's talking about a real person that was king here in Babylon. So in verse 2 again, it tells us there, it says, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of the years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. So how did Daniel have a book of Jeremiah? I don't know. I'm not sure. Did he carry it there with him? Did it come later? I don't know. I'm not sure how he got that. But, he had a scroll of Jeremiah that he read, and it said that, he said, wow, it says we're going to be here 70 years, There's probably a little bit of comfort for him, but the truth is Daniel was probably a teenager when he went there, so he was like in his 80s by the time this was all over. And Daniel never did go back to Judah, so he died there and was buried there, which a lot of the Israelites never did go back to Israel. So Jeremiah spoke of 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. And desolation means the land was laid waste. So Daniel read this and he says, wow, 70 years. And so if you'd flip back to Jeremiah chapter 25, because I want you to see this. You got Daniel, Ezekiel, Lamentations. Lamentations is just Jeremiah on steroids. Very, very sad book. But Jeremiah chapter 25, if you could flip back 2 books, and verse 7 through 11, if you're there, it says this. In Jeremiah 25, starting with verse 7. Yet you have not hearkened unto me, saith the Lord, that you might provoke me to anger with the works of your hands to your own hurt. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, because you have not heard my words, behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith the Lord, and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against this land, and against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about, and will utterly destroy them, and make them an astonishment, and a hissing, and a perpetual desolation. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth, and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, the voice of the bride, the sound of the millstones, the light of the candle. And the whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. So isn't that cool that Daniel said that, and he got it from here, from the book of Jeremiah. So to me, it's amazing. So verse 11 here, it tells us, and the whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment. These nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years. So Daniel read that and he says, wow, this is what's happening to us right here. Now, I was thinking about this when I read this. Right now, you and I can read the book of Revelation. And we know what's going to happen in the book of Revelation. So we could be like Daniel today. We could say, it says this here, 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 and we can know about it. Just like Daniel did back then. So far and in between where there wasn't very many people that was like Daniel, maybe his 3 friends there, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But just like today, there's very few people that really get into the book of Revelation. So anyways here, in Leviticus 26, verse 18, 21, 24, and 28, it says there in verses for them doing things against God that they'll be punished 7 times for their sins. I remember when I first got saved over in Germany at a Bible study, the guy teaching his Bible study had said, and I still remember this today, he says, if you steal something from somebody, God's going to take seven times that from you. And it scared the daylights out of me. I thought, well, if I take something, but he's taken out of context. It's not what it says, does it? But as a young Christian, not saved very long, I thought, no kidding. But I even really then thought, oh, this is ridiculous later on. Just as I studied, I thought, this guy that told me that. But anyways, God says he'll punish them 7 times for the sins they commit. So we'll talk about what these are here in just a second. If we go back and see the law of the land, basically Israel broke God's law of the land, and that's why they went into the Babylonian captivity. Back in Exodus 23, verse 10 through 11 on the screen, it tells us, and this is what God wants them to do. 6 years you shall sow or harvest the land. You shall gather fruits thereof, but the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie still, that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave, the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner, you shall deal with your vineyard and your olive yard. So vineyard, your grapes, your olives, and also, in other words, they were to harvest for 6 years, right? And then that very 6th year, God would bless the crop that year, and they would put it in silos or in barns and keep it, okay? And we know this back in Egypt, that happened there back then too also. But anyways, they were supposed to do that 7th year. It's called a 7th year Sabbath for the land. Let the land rest. Let it heal. Let it, get its strength back and so on. The poor people, they can go out there, and if they find crops, they can have them, or the animals can. But you're not supposed to be harvesting every 7th year. They ignored that law completely. I mean, it's an important law for God, but they ignored it. Oh, so what? Who cares? Sounds a lot like what's going on in the world today with people that claim to be Christians. They ignore God's laws too. Anyways, but I've got a reference under Leviticus chapter 25, verse 1 through 4. And there's a lot of other references we could talk about here. But God had told Moses about this 7-year Sabbath, okay, back there in Leviticus 25, verse 1 through 4. So let's go back to Daniel chapter 9. And in Daniel chapter 9, we're going to read verses 20 through 23. This is right after that prayer, and this builds up to where we get into Daniel 9, verse 24 through 27. So Daniel chapter 9, verse 20. It says this, "And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication or prayers before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation or offering sacrifice. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplications or prayers, the commandment came forth, and I am come to show you, for you are greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the visions." When I read this, I says, "O Daniel," in verse 22, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. Many times when I begin studying for something, I'll say, Lord, open my eyes, help me to see this, help me to understand this. And there's some amazing times when I study that, God will just bring a verse to my mind, and it is kind of cool how this happens. But Daniel was greatly beloved, as it says here in verse 23, "Thou art greatly beloved, and therefore understand the matter and consider the vision." Daniel was an amazing person. There's nothing in the Bible that says anything bad about Daniel. Now, obviously, he was a sinner, right? Everybody's a sinner. But it doesn't say anything bad about Daniel in the Bible. And to be a Daniel, that's amazing to think about that. So anyways, in verse 22, Gabriel said, "O Daniel, I am now come forth to give you skill and understanding. You are greatly beloved, therefore understand the matter and consider the vision." In other words, Daniel, I got something to tell you. Pay attention. I'm going to give you some good information here. Then in Daniel 9:24, he says, 70 weeks are determined. Now, determined means marked out or established. Like if I was to say, because you did this, you're going to spend 10 years doing this. That's basically what God's saying here. 70 weeks are determined. They're marked out. They're established. Upon your people, Daniel's people, and upon your holy city. That's Daniel's holy city. And it says, then he goes on and he'll give 6 accomplishments that have to be finished before the 70 weeks is finished, okay? So this is good to understand this. Some people say 7, but I think it's really 6. But it says, first, it says to finish the transgression. And we'll go over these in just a second. To make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So there's 6 things here that have to be done before that 70 weeks is completed, okay? So we'll understand this more as we go through this. But as you see here, Daniel's people are the Jews, the Hebrews, Israel. I mean, there's people today that will say replacement theology. They'll say the church replaced Israel. No, it didn't. Israel is still God's elect in his eyes, and he loves them, and he has a plan for them. And during the tribulation, we're going to see that God's going to save 1/3 of the Jewish people. And then it says the holy city is Jerusalem. That's what's talking about here with Daniel and Daniel 9:24. So these 6 items, I'll have them listed on the screen. In the 70 weeks, now let me explain to you what the weeks means in just a minute, okay? Just realize weeks doesn't mean weeks as you think, okay? We'll accomplish the following 6 items. To finish the transgression. Now that means, basically that word means, there's different words for sins, iniquity, and transgression here. Transgression basically means rebellion. Now we know on the cross, Jesus Christ, John 19:30, he said it is finished. Sins were paid for, right? John 19:30. We know that, you and I. But as far as Israel is concerned, Israel has not accepted their Messiah yet, this Messiah. Zechariah 13:1, if you want a good reference, Zechariah 13:1 says that they will come to know this Messiah, okay? So that's number 1. to finish the transgression or the rebellion. That's going to be taken care of. Israel will not be rebellious anymore at this point in time. Then number 2, to make an end of sins. That's a different word than transgressions. It's the idea of purification. It'll be eliminated. A good verse for that would be Ezekiel 37:23. So Ezekiel 37:23 talks about that. So it's basically that, sins will be eliminated. They're purified. Obviously, this hasn't happened yet, right? You'd have to be living in a bizarro world to think that it has, because we know that it hasn't. But it will be by the end of these 70, what's referred to as weeks. So number 3, to make a reconciliation for iniquity. And that iniquity means like atonement. They're punished. Israel won't understand this until after the 70 weeks. Zechariah 12:10 says they'll look upon him whom they pierced. They'll finally realize that this Messiah was the Messiah that they rejected. So that's Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10. To make reconciliation for iniquity means reconcile, makes things right? And so number 4, to bring in everlasting righteousness. We've talked about this a lot, studying Revelation, and I've mentioned 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 13. In 2 Peter 3:13 it says, wherein dwelleth righteousness, the new heaven and earth. 2 Peter 3:13. So someday that's going to happen, right? It hasn't happened yet. So anybody that says this has been fulfilled already and done with, you could say, you guys are nutso, okay? This has not happened. I don't know how they get away with that, but there's those that say this has already been completed and fulfilled. And I am not one of them. So number 5, to seal up vision and prophecy. We know there's a lot of prophecies and there's visions and things that haven't been completely fulfilled yet, right? But they will be fulfilled. And they're going to be. We've got the tribulation and so on, and the return of Christ, all these different prophecies, they will be fulfilled. Revelation 22, verse 18 talks about this, Revelation 22:18. But we'll see that by the end of the tribulation, all these prophecies are going to be fulfilled. Then you have the millennial kingdom. So there's still a lot to be done yet, right? According to the Bible. And then the last one, to anoint the most holy. There's 2 different views on this, and I kind of believe both of them. The 2 views are, one is that the Holy of Holies in the temple during the millennial kingdom is going to be anointed, okay? It's going to be purified. It was defiled, and it's going to be purified for it to be used during the millennial kingdom. And another one is that Jesus the King will be anointed. Remember back in 1 Samuel 16:12? In 1 Samuel 16:12, David was anointed as king, right? And Jesus Christ is going to come and is going to be, the lineage of David over the millennial kingdom and be anointed as king. So Holy of Holies, Jesus anointed, probably both if you ask me, but I don't know for sure on that. It doesn't say 100%, it just says anoint the most holy, okay? Okay, so in Daniel 9:24, let's look at this word weeks to see what it means, okay? Before I get into that, if I was to say a dozen, what's the first thing that pops in your head? Eggs, right? A dozen eggs. But does dozen always mean eggs? No, dozen means 12. It could be 12 of this, 12 of that, 12 of this, right? That's the same idea here for weeks. Weeks is the word Shabuah. I love this word, Shabuah. Actually, I worked with a guy from Pakistan when I worked at Motorola years and years ago, and his name was Kurian Shabuah. And I used to always go, Shabu, Shabu. And he got tired of that. And so he got mad at me, so I quit doing it. But Shabuah is how you pronounce that word, that Hebrew word. And it means a time period of 7, okay? Weeks is basically a group of 7. That's what that word means, right? You get that? It means a group of 7. Just like a dozen means a group of 12, okay? That makes things make a little more sense, doesn't it? So Daniel 9:24 says that their punishment will be 70 weeks are determined or required from you. God said, I'm going to require 70 weeks from you. So that weeks means a group of 7. So it means 70 groups of 7 are determined or required upon your people and your holy cities. This makes sense? Everybody? Okay. Then 70 time periods of 7, or 70 weeks, 70 time periods of 7, as on the screen, is the additional punishment after the 70-year captivity. They were going to be sent to Babylon in captivity for 70 years. But after that, they have another 490 years, because 70 times 7 is 490, that they still owe God, because they dishonored that Sabbath for so long. And so that there is 70 times 7. That word 7 is a week, right? It means a group of 7. 70 times 7 means 490. So what does that 490 time period mean? Is it days? Is it weeks? Is it months? Is it years? Okay? Well, remember the list of 6 accomplishments for this time period? All of them, none of them have been done yet, right? They still have to be done yet. So 490, it can't be weeks, months, or days, can it be? And even 490 years from back then has already been done yet. But let's understand this, because this is pretty miraculous when we think about this. But only years make sense, okay? But let me tell you that I'm going to say it's years, and we're going to see that it's years here shortly. So when it says 70 times 7, that comes out with a number 490. That's 490 years is going to be determined upon your people Israel, that they're going to owe God 490 years, okay? That's how long he's punished them for what they're doing. So let's think about this a little bit. I might make it. I don't know. So the question is there any justification for this time period being 490 years? First of all, I've got 4 items that we'll look at here. The 6 items in verse 24 are yet to be completed, right? So years would make more sense than weeks, months, or days, right? So even years doesn't quite fit yet, but we'll see that here shortly. The second one, did you know back in Genesis 29, verse 21 and 30, when Jacob worked for what was Leah's father's name? Laban, right. Laban, that he required him to work. He said actually this word. He said Shabuah. You have to work for me for a Shabuah. And he meant 7 years. And Jacob worked for 7 years, and he was given Leah, and he wasn't too happy. He wanted the younger one. He wanted Rachel. So what Laban says, you work for me another week, meaning another 7 years, and I will give you Rachel. So we see in Genesis 29, verse 21 through 30, that a week means years in that case, right? Okay? So there is a precedent for that. Okay, so the next one, number 3, the context of Daniel 9, Daniel was thinking in years. Remember in verse 1 and 2, he talked about the 70 years that they'd be in captivity. He was thinking years, so I don't know how much strength that has for this argument, but still he was thinking in years back in Daniel, the first couple of verses. So, number 4, coherence with the book of Revelation. If you look at Revelation and Daniel and you understand the times that are given there, I always talk about the midpoint of the tribulation, 1,260 days, 42 months, 3.5 years, right? You compare that to Daniel. And here on the screen, remember in Revelation it talks about 1,260 days. The Jewish calendar uses 30 days per month, 360 days per year. Okay, that's a Jewish calendar. Our calendar is all messed up, right? We have leap year, we have 28 days, we have 30 years, 30 days, 31 days, right? We have 365 days, then we have leap year every 4th year. Jewish calendar, they straightened it out every 7th year somehow, but their calendar was 360 days of 30-day months, right? Okay, just so you understand that. So when you get into the book of Revelation, God's working with the Jewish people again. It goes back to their calendar. And so like in Revelation 11:8, Revelation 12:6, it talks about 1,260 days. 1,260 days is a half of a year, right? That's 42 months. Okay, or half of 7 years, what I mean. Then 42 months is the 3.5 years it's talked about in Revelation 11:2 and 13:5. Then it mentions that 3.5 years in Revelation 12:14. It says time, and a half a time. And then if you compare this with Daniel 7:25, 9:27, and 12:7, you'll see that the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, they have that cohesiveness that's all fits together like a glove. It makes sense. They're talking about the same thing. And so these are basically my 4 reasons that I believe that this is 490 years, but there's more to this than that, so let's continue on with it. In Daniel chapter 9:25, or I've got here, so if 70 weeks equals 490 years, then what is the starting date? Because you want to know what is this date that says when the Messiah will be cut off? And we'll get to that in just a second. But Daniel 9:25 tells us, know therefore and understand. So Gabriel told Daniel, know therefore and understand that the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. So there was some kind of contract or authorization to go, and you can go and rebuild Jerusalem. They were letting the people from Babylon go and rebuild Jerusalem. And it says, so, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince is Jesus. He's the one that came there in the first century, right? Shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 7 weeks, 7 groups of 7. So what's 7 times 7? 49, right? Okay, then 3 score. Now what's a score? Who knows a score? 20. Now if this was Purdue, it would be 66 to nothing. I should have said that. But 3 score. 3 times 20. So that's 60. And 2 weeks. 62 weeks. 62 times 7 is what? Who's mathematical genius here? Well, it's 434, okay? So it says here, the Messiah Prince shall be 7 weeks, which really means 7 sets of 7, 49 years. And 62 weeks, which is 62 weeks. 62 sets of 7, which is 434 years. Okay, now we'll start putting this together here in just a second. We'll understand Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. So the parts of that verse here, the 5 parts I've got listed on the screen, there will be a commandment or an authorization to go and restore and to build Jerusalem. Remember that the Jewish people were in Babylon captivities, but they're going to be let to go free, and now they're going to be let to authorized to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild their city, and so on and so on. Then it says, unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks, 62, so 7 plus 62, 69 weeks. The street shall be built again on the wall, even in troublous times. Now, even in troublous times, if you read Ezra and Nehemiah, you will understand that they had to have a guard standing next to the guy that was building. You know, somebody with a sword or a spear or a bow and arrow. They had to have somebody guarding the place, because there was people there in Jerusalem did not want them to rebuild this city, but Israel went ahead and did it anyways. So that's why it says, even in troublous times. So then the 5 points here, our questions would be, what is the date of this commandment? What is the starting point for this 490 years, these 70 weeks, right? Because 70 times 7, 490 years. To rebuild Jerusalem onto and up to the Messiah the Prince. So remember Daniel back in the 500 BC, when's the Messiah coming? They're saying the Messiah is going to be cut off in this 490 years, right? Not exactly. Actually, it's going to be less 483, but we'll get to that in just a second. And number C, or letter C, Jerusalem took 49 years to rebuild, was given that time period. Messiah then will come 434 years later. So we have 69 weeks. We have the 7 weeks, and the 62 weeks equals 483 years total, okay? And then, so D, Jerusalem will be rebuilt with a protective wall, built around to make it safe. And there will be difficulties on this rebuilding, like that's what I said, they'll have guard duty. Okay, so 7 weeks equals 49 years. 62 weeks equals 434 years. 69 weeks equals 483 years. Now remember, these are Jewish years, okay, of 360 days per year. Our year is 365, so it's a little bit different. So here's the question. Didn't we say in chapter 9, verse 24, that 70 weeks are decreed upon Israel? And here I'm only showing 69 weeks. The question is, where is this 70th week? Verse 24 talks about it. It says there'll be 70 weeks determined upon Israel. We're missing 7 years, okay? And I know you know what this is, but I'll explain it to you in a little detail here in just a second. So on verse 26, Daniel 9:26, and after 62 weeks, we know that's 3 times 20, it's 62 weeks, 434 years. After 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy this city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So understanding this, it's not 100% clear in understanding this, but I think I will explain this what I believe it means here. So after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. Now, if you study in the Bible, you know what cut off means? You'll be killed. That's what cut off means. He was crucified. So the Messiah will be crucified after these, the 7 weeks, then 62 more weeks, right? 69 weeks total, 483 weeks total the Messiah will be killed from the time period that they're allowed to go back and rebuild Jerusalem. Does that make sense? If this works out, this is going to be pretty amazing, isn't it? So anyways, but notice it says, but not for himself. Who did Jesus die for? You guys, right? And some of you had more sins than others, right? I'd be the chief of sinners. No, Paul was the chief of sinners. But anyways, he died for all of us. That's what he says. That's why it says, but not for himself, the Messiah. Isn't it interesting and fascinating that the New Testament, we know Jesus died for the sins of the people. 1 John chapter 2, verse 2, sins of the whole world. And yet it says that back in the Old Testament, the book of Daniel, the Messiah would come, but not for himself. He'd be cut off. And then it says the prince, the people of the prince. Now this is the Romans of the prince. Now this is another prince. This is not Jesus. This is the Antichrist, a prince that will come. Shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The people there are the Romans. The prince to come is the Antichrist. And that's why many people believe the Antichrist will be of Roman origin, of what Rome was at that time period. Some people say Assyrian. I think he'll be like an Assyrian, but I don't know how he could be an Assyrian. But anyways, he will be from that Roman Empire that was there that when the Antichrist comes. And this could be more than what we think when you think about this, and I'll show you in a little minute. But 7 weeks equals 49 years. 62 weeks is 434 years. 69 weeks is 483. So this all makes sense, right? Okay. So it's math 201, maybe. And on to the end of the war, desolations are determined. Israel will never have peace until the end. Have they had any peace that we know of in their history? No, it's always been trouble after trouble. 1948, when they went back in the land, it's just been constant. And look at what's going on there today. So, verse 27. Verse 27. And he, referring to the Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant. This Antichrist is going to confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, for 7 years. Now you understand we're talking about the tribulation, right? Starting to make sense. Pretty cool. So 1 week. And in the middle of the week, 3.5 years, in the middle of the week, when he goes into the temple, defiles it, right? We talked about that talking last couple of weeks on Thursday, plus in book of Revelation, we're covering this also. But it says, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation, that's the offering, to cease. So the Antichrist is going to go in the temple, say, stop, Jews, you can't do this. The Jews are preparing for this right now. They got the red heifer, they got right now, they've got all the tinsels made, they got the music prepared, everything for this temple right now. They can build it 6 months, they say. So this temple, when they give authorization, and who knows what Donald Trump's going to have instrumental in doing this. We don't know. There's a lot of interesting things going on right now over there. But it says, he shall cause a sacrifice and oblation offering to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations. Some of your Bibles may say the wings of abomination. And what that really means, because that's kind of confusing in it, but it means from one tip of the wing to the other wing. In other words, it means is the extreme defilement. It means to the extent of completely defile. The Antichrist is going to go in there and defile that temple. Just like back in, what was it, Antiochus Epiphanes went and defiled the temple by sacrificing a pig, which is pretty bad, right? But here, this guy's going to go in here, he's going to make it desolate, he's going to defile it, even until the consummation. Consummation means the end. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Now that last phrase there, poured, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. That word desolate could mean, it could have been translated as desolator. And I think this is talking about the ultimate end of the Antichrist, as we see in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we see in Revelation 20, verse 10, he gets cast into the lake of fire. So God has it determined that this satanic inspired person, actually it's chapter 19, verse 20, the Antichrist, then 20, verse 10 is actually Satan. But anyways, determined shall be poured upon a desolate, he will be destroyed. Desolator will be destroyed. So he, Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, 7 years. So this Antichrist is going to come on the stage. We're going to be gone. We'll have been raptured, and he's going to go and he's going to confirm a covenant with Israel for 7 years that, hey, whatever this covenant entails, I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. But in the middle of the week, he will break that covenant. I mean, liar from the day go, right? He shall cause the sacrifice and offerings to cease. And we know 1/2 week is 3.5 years. He goes to the temple and he declares himself God. We've talked about this on covering Revelation. So in the New Testament, the verses on the screen, Matthew 24, verse 15 and 16. This is Jesus talking here. He says, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation. I mean, where did Jesus get that term from? Obviously, God inspired the Bible, but you know what I'm saying, right? From Daniel 9:27. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso reads, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Well, we know that they flee into the Judean mountains in Petra, and they're protected there. At least that's what we believe, okay, in Petra. Anyways, that's the midpoint of the tribulation. The Jews have to flee, because Antichrist is going to declare all-out war on the Jews. And then in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 through 4, we talked about also on Thursday night a few weeks ago. It says, the man of sin, that's Antichrist, Mr. AC, be revealed, the son of perdition, the son of destruction. I like to refer to him as the son of hell, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God. Now you want to know a narcissist, this guy's going to be a narcissist to the nth degree, or that is worship. So that he is God, sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. That's the midpoint of the tribulation, right? Okay? So you see how the New Testament fits in with the Old Testament? And in Revelation 13:6, as we looked at that, this Antichrist, he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. Who are those that dwell in heaven? That's going to be us. Did you know Satan hates your guts? I hate to be so blunt, but it's true. He hates you. He wanted to destroy you. He's not too happy that you guys were taken out in the rapture, that we were gone. I mean, he's going to do everything he can to take as many people to hell with him that he can. And yet, God's going to take us out of here. He's going to rapture us out of here. But it says here, notice he blasphemes his name, his tabernacle, them that dwell in heaven. I mean, anybody that's in heaven, he's cursing against, the Antichrist. And that's actually Satan, right? As you know. So let's get into some mathematics, the fun stuff. Understanding these numbers. As I said, the 49 years, which is the 7 weeks, to rebuild Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity ends, they're authorized to go back and rebuild Jerusalem. 434, 62 weeks later, Jesus will ride a donkey into Jerusalem to be crucified. How did Daniel know this? I can't tell you what you're going to be doing next week, much less a year from now. How could Daniel say 500 years later? Because God wrote the Bible, right? This is going to be fascinating. So then number 3, from the end of the Babylonian captivity to the death of Jesus is 483 years. Okay, that's 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. That's 69 weeks total. That's 483 years. A decree is issued to allow the Jews to build Jerusalem. Okay? So far we all follow this, right? So number 4, the 70 weeks is 490 years. Minus the 483 years is 7 years. That's the 7 years missing. We know that's a 7-year tribulation. That's still future, right? So there is a number 5. There is a gap between the 483 years and the last 7 years of and that gap's been about 2,000 years, right? Actually, 2032, it'll be about 2,000 years exactly. I mean, if you, whatever Jesus' exact year when he died, okay? I'm not saying that I know exactly, but many people believe that he died in 32 AD. So this is the church age that we're in right now. That's this gap between these 69th week and the 70th week. We're that gap, right? We're in that gap, we, the church, called out an assembly. So there's a gap between the 483 years, the last 7 years, and it's approximately 22,000 years so far. Church age, the Bible calls that the time of the Gentiles, Luke 21, verse 24. And Luke 21, 24 is going to end at the rapture of the church. Then God goes back and works with Israel again. Okay? So after the rapture, God again works with the nation of Israel and goes back to their calendar. Okay? So ready to dig a little deeper? So let me read again Daniel 9, 26 and 27. And in verse 26 it said this, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be the flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, In the middle of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the offerings to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate or the desolator. Okay? So, he shall confirm this covenant with many for 1 week, and as we know, that's a tribulation. 7 years he confirms it, okay? That could happen soon, after we're gone. It'll happen. Could be soon. We don't know when. But confirm is the word gabar. It means to make strong, to strengthen. Confirm, it doesn't mean there's going to be a new covenant. It doesn't mean all of a sudden, hey, let's create a covenant for Israel. It means something's in place, existing, because it says confirm. The word gabar means to make strong, to strengthen, okay? And then that covenant is the word berit, and it means a covenant, an alliance, and a pledge. So this Antichrist is going to come up with this covenant or this pledge with Israel for 7 years, okay? And so here is what a lot of people think this pertains to, is the Abraham Accords, the declaration. Here, you could go on this website and you can find everything you want to know about the Abrahamic Accords. It's pretty amazing. I mean, this is brokered by the U.S., you know. I mean, they're the ones that are basically doing all this. And even though Joseph Biden could not get Saudi Arabia to basically join up with the Abrahamic Accords, I think Donald Trump will, probably, okay? But anyways, let me read this. We, the undersigned, recognize the importance of maintaining and strengthening peace in the Middle East and around the world based on mutual understanding and coexistence, as well as respect for human dignity and freedom, including religious freedom. Now, there's a lot more to this, okay? There's pages and pages if you go on this website and all kinds of drop-down menus. But the symbol there, Abrahamic Accords, as you can see right there. So, you all know, we talk about Ezekiel 38 sometimes, right? That Ezekiel 38 war. And that's going to be where these nations attack Israel, okay? And so I want to just deviate for a few seconds here. Ezekiel 38, verse 13. It talks about these nations. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish and all the young lions thereof shall say unto you, are you come to take a spoil? Have you gathered your company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? So before I go on to the next bullet point, we know that in the last days, there's going to be what's called the Ezekiel 38 war, where these nations with Russia leading, Iran, Turkey, Sudan, Libya, and some others, we don't know all the ones, they'll come down probably down through Ukraine to Israel and attack Israel. Okay, but Ezekiel 38:13, some nations are not involved in this, and they complain and say, what are you guys doing to Israel? Why are you coming down here to attack Israel? And so that's a complaint. Is issued by the nations not included in the Ezekiel 38 war. You know, Russia, Turkey, Iran, Libya, Sudan, etc. are going to be the ones that are going to attack Israel, okay? So, and these nations, as figured out, according to Sheba, Dedan, merchants of Tarshish, and so on, they know it's Saudi Arabia, probably Spain, maybe a conglomeration of Western powers, including some from Europe. I don't know for sure. Dr. Andy Woods, he wrote a book called The Middle East Meltdown. And on page 82, he covers this, and it's a pretty good book. Now, there are some that believe these young lions could possibly be Great Britain, USA. I don't believe they are, but I don't believe they aren't either, okay? It's something we don't know. It's hard to say for sure. But these Abrahamic Accords, the issue and authority is the United States, and right now, Bahrain, Morocco, United Arab Emirates, Sudan, all are signed up with this. Egypt and Jordan had that peace treaty when they were at war with them previous to that, which I don't know if these peace treaties mean a whole lot. But Saudi Arabia is being worked on for this. And this includes not only the items that I said there about peace and freedom and so on, but it also talks about trade and stuff back and forth, tariffs and all that stuff. So Saudi Arabia, Biden didn't get that through. Trump probably will get him to sign up for this. So we'll wait and see on that. And I think Keith is here. So verse 25 and 26. You see, that's that. You can let him in. Is that Keith?
Yeah, he's down at the door yet.
We standing outside. He's afraid to come in. Come on in. We've joined the crowd. Oh, okay. So Daniel 9, verse 25 through 26. Let me see. Verse 25 and 26, it says here again, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks, and the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. Then verse 26, and after 62 weeks, which is 62 weeks, shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be the flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So, a commandment was issued in Daniel's day allowing them to rebuild Jerusalem, okay? Remember, they were all in captivity in Babylon. And from this commandment's issue date to 69 weeks, 483 years, later the Messiah Jesus would be killed, cut off, crucified, right? Okay, so there's 4 different commandments that were issued if you dig through the Old Testament in this time period that were issued. The only one, and I'm not going to go through these because it would take too long, but this is an authorization that Babylon is given to Israel. Yeah, you may go back and you may rebuild your city, Jerusalem, okay? The one that fits is the decree of Artaxerxes. This is Artaxerxes the first, and he issued it to Nehemiah, and it was on March 14th, 445 BC, or the Hebrew calendar, Nisan 1, 445. That, you can see that in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1 through 8. If you get a chance, read Nehemiah 2, verse 1 through 8 about this. So Artaxerxes was a Persian king in Babylon. Remember the Medes and the Persians? He was the king over them. That at the time, Artaxerxes the first. So he issued this on March 14th, 445 BC. And this stuff is pretty accurate as far as these dates in the Old Testament. It's really amazing. Now, we know that Jesus went into Israel on a donkey, right? But we know the Old Testament even prophesied of that, Zechariah 9:9. It says, rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king comes unto you. He is just and having salvation, lowly in riding upon a donkey, and upon the colt the fall of a donkey. That's an Old Testament prophecy that Jesus is going to ride a donkey into Jerusalem, right? So the fulfillment is Matthew chapter 21, verse 5. And it says, tell you, the daughter of Zion, behold, your king comes unto you meek, and sitting upon a donkey and a colt, the fall of a donkey. That's what Jesus said. And that's true. Jesus did. Now, I'm going to show you the next verse here in just a second. But this was the spring of somewhere around 32 AD, okay? Most experts believe that. Okay, a lot of people have spent a lot smarter than me as calculate this all out. But in Luke 19, verse 41 through 44, this event is recorded where Jesus rides the donkey into Jerusalem. And it was a sad, sad time because Jesus thought, you guys should have known what Daniel was saying when I was coming, and they missed it, right? And so, 19, verse 41 through 44. And when he, that's Jesus, was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, if you had known, even you, at least in your day, the things which belong unto you for peace, but now they are hid from your eyes. For the day shall come upon you, and your enemies shall cast a trench about you, and compass you round, and keep you in on every side, and shall lay you even with the ground, and your children within you. Ye shall not leave in one stone upon another, because you know not the time of your visitation. They did not know that this Jesus riding that donkey was the Messiah. Now, there were some that threw out palm trees. There's a few right there. But Israel was destroyed. In 70 AD, it was basically laid flat. All the Jews were scattered, and they didn't come back to the land until May 14th, 1948. So I just have two more slides. We'll be done here in just a second. So how does this all work out mathematically? Artaxerxes the first, the decree was issued on March 14th, 445 BC, okay? You see that? 69 weeks, or 483 years later, is what date? What date would that be? Now, here's the confusing part. This is the Jewish dates. We're looking at our Gregorian calendar, so we have to kind of make this into a Gregorian calendar to understand it. Because the Jewish calendar is 30 days per month, 360 days per year. But if you want to convert this into their calendar, you'd say 360 times 43. It'd be 173,880 days, okay? At least we know that. 360 days per year, there's 483 years, so we know that there's 173,880 days. Now, if you want to convert that into our years, you'd take that, divide it by 365, you'd come up with somewhere around 476 years, 5 months or so. Now, you'd have to figure out the leap years, and you have to go from 1 BC to 1 AD, which only 1 year. It gets kind of complicated. Anyways, but here's the thing. March 14th, 445 BC plus 173,880 days calculates out to be, and you know what? You could go on Google, and you could ask him, what would this date be? And it'll give it to you, okay? Now, eventually the Antichrist or Satan's going to figure this out and screw this up. But it comes out to be April 6, 32 AD. That is amazing. That should bring tears to your eyes. Daniel said back 500 some years earlier that this 69 weeks, 483 years, is going to come out when the Messiah comes, and it comes out to be when Jesus rode that donkey into Jerusalem. This is absolutely weird. It really is. The liberals can do all they want and tell you about Daniel that is written later on and so on, but they're grasping at straws. This is the absolute amazing prophecy. Sir Robert Anderson, many of you have heard of him, like 1900. He calculated this manually. He didn't have the calculators and the stuff that we have today, but he calculated this out manually. He wrote a book. I've got that book, and he comes up with the same thing here, doing it manually, figuring it out. A lot smarter guy than I am. But doesn't this fascinate you? Wouldn't this tell you that if people understood this, they would all believe the Bible? But it doesn't work that way, does it? I mean, people have blinders. They don't want to see it. But this is the date that Jesus rode a donkey into Jerusalem to be crucified. Daniel 9:26, it said, after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, crucified, but not for himself. He died for you and I. Daniel prophesied the date Jesus would be crucified 500 years before it happened. 500 years before it happened. I mean, this is amazing. It honestly is. Every time I study this, it brings tears to my eyes when I think about this. I don't care if it was 10 to 20 years off, I'd still be amazed by it. I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, it's ridiculous. This was prophesied over 500 years before it happened. So, we're going to finish with the rapture tonight. Be just another minute. So the question is, beside all this amazement with this here, what does that have to do with the pre-tribulation rapture? Right? Well, that gap between the 69th week and the 70th week is a church age, at 2,000 years. Then we get raptured. Then that 70th week of Daniel, Israel still owes God a week. 7 years. That's a tribulation. So we're in the church age right now. When we get removed out of here, and God goes ahead and works with Israel in the 7 years, that's the 70th week of Daniel. That's the 7 years. There are some people that, when I put this on YouTube, I'll get a whole list of stuff like this. All these geniuses telling me how dumb I am. But listen, you try to see what they say if it makes any sense. But anyways, time of the Gentiles, been almost 2,000 years. Romans 11:25 says, for I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, unless you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be coming in. And that could be pretty soon when we get raptured. Ephesians 5:27, that he might present to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that should be holy and without blemish. That's the way we should be. We should be pure and holy. 1 Thessalonians 4:17, this is what we're looking forward to. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. We will be removed before that 70th week, before the 7-year tribulation. Then that last week, that last 7 years, that 490 years will be completed. You can't tell me that this Bible isn't amazing. I mean, it really is. It absolutely is. And if you don't know Christ as Savior, John 3:36 says, he that believes on the Son has everlasting life. He that believes not the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him. Salvation is a free gift, and anybody can take it simply by simple faith in Jesus Christ as Savior. So that's what I have here.